Hey folks, I'm Owl, this is Yarnella Reads, and today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up and July plans. I read 8 books in the month of June. Don't be too impressed. 2 of those were pretty small graphic novels, 2 of those were middle grade books, oh, and 1 was a novella. So the first thing I read this month was Bingo Love by T. Franklin, Jen St. Onge, Joy San, and Cardinal Ray. This is a super cute graphic novel that follows 2 women who, I think it's in the 50s-ish is when it starts. They fall in love in their youth, but they feel forced apart because of the culture and everything. They are forced apart by their families, and so they meet up years and years later, and you'll just have to read to see what happens. I ended up giving this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is very cute. It's very predictable, but like in a fluffy way. Sort of shitty to deal with the period-typical homophobia. I just don't do well with period-typical homophobia. So if that bugs you, now you know. But overall it was very cute. I didn't have much to say against it, so yeah, 4.5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read this month was The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. And I was lucky enough to find this gorgeous edition at Barnes & Noble when I was in Eugene for our wedding, and just, oh, it's so pretty. I admit it, that was a cover buy, but I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a very, very good book. The premise is, 200 years ago, 3 women were drowned in a small coastal town of Oregon for being witches, and for the last 200 years they have come back every summer to haunt that town, killing at least 3 people each summer. So the main character, Penny Talbot, lives in this town of Sparrow, Oregon, and she lives on a tiny island and is just trying to get through another sparrow season, which lasts from the first day of June until the summer solstice. There's also a romance subplot. There's a mystery trying to figure out which of the girls are being possessed by the Swan sisters. It's all very interesting. I love the ways that it surprised me. I loved that I didn't necessarily, like, I was able to sort of guess what was coming, but then it wasn't exactly what I was expecting, and that was really cool. And I loved the writing. Oh my gosh, it was so lyrical. I loved her writing. I can't wait to read more by Shay Earnshaw. I wasn't totally sold on the love story aspect, or the ending, quite. It was very, very good. It was all very good, and I highly recommend people read it, but especially if you enjoy, like, contemporary fantasy, magic elements, contemporary witches. I would recommend you read this book. The next book I read was Nightlights by Lorena Alvarez. This is, again, a pretty short graphic novel, middle grade-ish. It follows the main character. I don't remember the main character's name. I don't even remember if she was named. I think she was. But it's from her perspective, and she draws things. She gets inspiration from her dreams and from the lights that come to her at night, and then she draws them, and she meets a new friend at school, and things get a little bit weird in her imaginary world. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was beautifully illustrated. Oh my gosh, the art was so good. I didn't quite understand what was going on for some of it. I think I tried to think too hard about it, which is why I ended up with a 4 instead of a 5, but overall it was a super quick read, and it was fun, and it was a little creepy at times, so just be prepared for a little creepy. But yeah, all in all good. The next book that I read was Lillian Duncan by Donna Geffert. This one got a 4 out of 5 stars as well. It is about Duncan, who has just moved to Florida after some mess happens back home with his family, with his dad. He has bipolar disorder, and he doesn't want his new classmates to know that. He just wants to fit in and be popular and be on the basketball team. It's also about Lily, who is a trans girl who's bullied at school. They don't know that she's trans. She's not out. Her mom knows, her sister knows, and her dad is super unsupportive. And so it's their parallel journeys, becoming friends and figuring out who they are and being able to be themselves. Some content warnings for this one: for transphobia, homophobia and slurs, bullying, and some violence. Okay, so the book isn't perfect. Some of the problems I had with the book were it felt like I felt like it dealt with the mental health storyline just a little bit too neatly and cleanly at the end. There was this one great moment, and then suddenly he was feeling much better, and like he was able to deal with his illness much better. And as somebody who deals with mental illness, that is not the case. It was sort of what I expected when I started seeking help for my anxiety and depression, and that's not what happens. But for a middle grade book, I think it did just fine. It brought up these really difficult issues. The characters were more than just their identities, were more than just, Duncan was more than just having a kid who had bipolar disorder. Lily was more than just a trans girl. Lily has this mission to save a tree outside of her library. Duncan really wants to fit in. He really wants to be on the basketball team. He's coming to terms with everything that happened back home. So there's so much more to the story than just the diversity, but the diversity is such an important part anyway, and I think that those were interwoven really well. It also at times sort of seemed like an adult writing a kid's perspective, which I don't read a lot of middle grade, so that might be more common than I'm used to. I just didn't quite get into the writing as much as I had hoped. But all in all, a good book. I felt like it dealt with mental illness and trans identity pretty well, so 4 out of 5 stars. And next, we have my first 5-star read of the year. Folks, I am super picky about my 5 stars. If there's anything about this book that made me a little bit unsure, that pulled me out of the book a little bit, I give it a 4.5 instead. This was my first 5-star read of the year, and it is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Oh my god. This book is everything. I love all of the characters in this book. I love all of their adventures. And the cover is gorgeous. I knew it was a queer space story, and that automatically had me excited about it. But like when we got the new cover for this paperback, my bachelorette party was back in March, and I had a trip up to Portland, and we went to Pal's Bookstore, which is this amazing, wonderful, awesome bookstore, and this is one of the books that I got while I was there, and I just finally got around to reading it. It is superb. The plot is Rosemary is running from something in her past. We don't know what, we just know that she just got a new ident card, and she was hired aboard the Wayfarer as their clerk to handle the paperwork. The Wayfarer is a spaceship that tunnels holes, like wormholes, for travel purposes. There are so many characters, there's so much diversity in species, in sexuality, in the cultures. There are pronoun differences, and just it's good. It's just all really good. I highly recommend it to anybody who wants a queer space opera. And I'm really looking forward to reading the sequel at some point. It is more of a companion than a sequel. It takes place in the same world, not necessarily with the same characters. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. Not quite yet, I need a little bit of a break, but I do have it checked out from the library when I'm ready. And the sequel, in case you're wondering, is A Closed and Common Orbit. So the next thing I read in June was Alpha and Omega by Patricia Briggs. It is the prequel novella to the Alpha and Omega series by Patricia Briggs. I love her Mercy Thompson series, and this has set in the same world. There are still werewolves, there's still vampires and fae and all of that. I don't like the series quite as much because it's a little bit harder to ignore some of the sexism and like blatant toxic masculinity that comes with this particular werewolf telling, and I think most werewolf stories. This is my guilty pleasure. I'm not actually feeling guilty about it, but I also recognize that it is problematic and has some qualities that I don't quite support. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So content warnings for rape, toxic masculinity, just people being shitty, abuse, murder, but not too graphic on any of those. You just know that they've happened. The next book I read was Alana, the First Adventure by Tamara Pierce. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is another really close series to me. I love the Lioness Rampant books. In this first one, Alana, the main character, begins at 11 years old, and she and her twin brother Tom are supposed to go off to their next stage in life. For her, she's supposed to go to the convent and learn manners and magic and how to be a healer. And Tom is supposed to go to the castle and learn how to be a knight. Tom really just wants to learn how to be a sorcerer, and Alana really just wants to learn how to be a knight. And so she cuts her hair, pretends she's a boy, and they switch places. So she spends the rest of the book as Alan, and learning how to be a knight, and it covers from the ages of 11 to 14. And then the second book covers, I think, 14 to 18? And then after that age kind of becomes less relevant. It's more just the adventure she goes on. But there's 4 books in this series. It is super good. I love Tamara Pierce's writing. She's very upfront about so many different things, and I love that. You just don't get that a lot in like middle grade and some YA. I guess this straddles the line between middle grade and YA. I highly recommend it for anybody who just wants an adventure story without any really huge issues being tackled. You'll notice a theme in my videos for a while, and it's going to be no large issues being tackled. My doctor has said that I am not allowed to read large issues for a while, and I have to agree with her. The last book I read in this month was The Wedding Date by Jasmine Gullery, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. In this book, Alexa and Drew, the 2 main characters, end up getting stuck in an elevator while she is on the way to celebrate her sister getting partner in the law firm that she works at, and he is on his way to a wedding that he doesn't want to go to. It's his ex's wedding to his best friend. So while they're stuck together in this elevator, she ends up agreeing to be his date for this wedding, and it all just sort of goes from there. This book is really cute. It's kind of sexy at times, if that's what you're into. If it's not what you're into, I would recommend skipping over this book. It's one of the first romances that I have read that wasn't YA and was straight and didn't have sci-fi elements. It is the first adult contemporary romance that I've read that was not written by Nicholas Sparks. I had a soft spot for him in high school. It did discuss some big issues, but not in a way that made my soul sad. Alexa is black, Drew is white, it's an interracial relationship. I'm not Drew's biggest fan, and I was annoyed by the characters being stupid sometimes, so that's why this got a 4 instead of a higher star rating. But overall, I liked this book, and I would recommend it to anybody who's looking for a contemporary romance. Whew! Okay, half an hour into this video, and that was it for June. So let's talk about my plans for July. Instead of doing a TBR, I am just going to set general plans that are very possibly going to change, because that's the way of doing this that gives me the least anxiety. So first things first, let's actually discuss my summer reading goal. So if you wander over to my blog, you'll see the post that I made on my summer reading goals. That was sort of my substitute for my summer TBR. And it was that I wanted to read all of the queer books that I own in paper copy by the end of the summer. And that is from here to here and from here to here. And I've already read some of those, so I didn't have to reread all of them, just the ones I hadn't read yet. That is no longer my summer goal, that's sort of just a larger goal in general. The reason for this is that some of these books are really hard hitters, really depressing, deal with some really serious issues, and I am not in the place for that right now. I'm recognizing that. I'm not going to make myself read something that is going to potentially be triggering. So, in general, my goal is to read my queer books. And so over the course of this channel, maybe just the rest of the year, I am going to slowly whittle away at these and try and have them in my TBR, and for each month's wrap up and plan for the next month, I'll let you know how I'm doing so far. So for this time around, I read Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and again, I love that book so much. It's so good. So that is where I am on my reading goal. In the coming month, I just got an audiobook from the library, and so I'm hoping to read Undead Girl Gang by Lillian Duncan. I'm pretty sure the main character is queer and Wiccan and not white. Yep, I don't know in which way she is not white. But I will after I read it, and I'll let you know then. So I'm hoping to read that in the coming month. If anybody has read it and they know of any potential content warnings they could throw my way, I would be deeply appreciative. I don't want to be spoiled, but I do want to know what I'm getting into. I know that there's death in this book. I'm already a little bit worried about that being too much, so if anybody knows that this is not a fluffy book, please let me know. For the next 4 months, I have 1 arc each month, and so I'll tell you about that as they come. This month, it's Hull Metal Girls by Emily Skretski. Emily Skretski's previous books, The Abyss Surrounds Us and The Edge of the Abyss, were some of my favorite books of, I think 2016 was the year The Abyss Surrounds Us came out, but oh my gosh, they're very good. It's lesbians and pirates and sea monsters and adventure, and if that's the thing you're into, please go read that series. This is her new book. I am pretty sure it's a standalone. I don't actually know that much about it. I know there's some form of queer representation. I'm pretty sure there's some form of Muslim representation. And it's sci-fi in some way. And that's really all I needed. This author is essentially an auto-buy for me now, and when I had the chance to get the ARC from NetGalley, I jumped on it. So that is something you'll get to hear about sometime next month. I'm hoping to post the review on my blog on the book birthday, so you can always check that out. Some other things that I'm hoping to do in the next month, maybe continue the Alana series, the Lioness Rampant series by Tamara Pierce. I've got the third one from the library. I'm currently in the middle of the second one. I want to at least finish the second one because it's my favorite of the series, and then I might be feeling sated for a while. I might put off the third one. I'm also in the middle of Six of Crows. I have the audiobook from the library, and it's really, really good. It's reminding me a little bit of Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and that there's a bunch of different characters, and then they all have their own like agendas and storylines, but it's all within this one overarching plot, and I love that, and so that's cool. I also think there might be some queer happening, but I don't know for sure. I know that there is a very large queer ship in this book. I don't know if it's canon or not, so we'll see. If anybody knows, let me know, please. And the other big thing that I'm hoping to get to this month is Mask of Shadows. So Mask of Shadows by Lindsay Miller was one of my favorite books of the first half of the year. I read it back in February, I think. I listened to it on audiobook, and it got 4 out of 5 stars at the time because there were just so many names. I ended up getting a little bit confused and lost the thread of it, and so I'm thinking audiobook might just not be the best format for that. So when I was in Portland in March, I bought my own copy. I also got the ARC to the sequel, Rune of Stars, which comes out in August, and so I wanted to reread the first one before I read the second one. I'm very excited. The premise of this book is that Saul, the main character, is a criminal, thief person. They're also gender fluid, and they find out that there is an opening on the team of Queen's assassins called the Queen's Left Hand, and they go to audition for it. It reminds me a lot of Throne of Glass, which I read soon after this, except I liked this better because there was less weird, uncomfortable love triangle and more queerness. So if you're into Throne of Glass and also into queer stories and also into just general cool assassin stuff, I highly recommend this series. So yeah, that is my plan for July. You'll find out at the end of July if I do any of those things. I'll find out by the end of July if I do those things. And that's all for this video. Please let me know if you have any thoughts about the books that I read or the books that I'm hoping to read. If you want to follow me on other social media, I am on Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter as Yarnella Reads. And if you have any questions or comments, you know where to put them. I will link all the books that I mentioned in this video below. And that's all. Bye!